The Paradox of D.B. Cooper, a story inspired by real-life events. In a dimly lit living room in a modest apartment in Tacoma, Washington, Dan Cooper sat alone, surrounded by the clutter that marked a life long lived in shadows. A half-eaten sandwich lay forgotten on the coffee table, next to a crumpled newspaper filled with reports of a fading economy and rising public discontent. Outside, the skies threatened rain. Gray clouds hung low, mirroring the turmoil that churned within him. The monotonous tick of the clock echoed like a metronome, counting down to the moment that would shift his life forever. Dan was a man lost, trapped between the ideals he had fought for and the harsh reality of civilian life. Having returned from Vietnam, he struggled to find purpose beyond the battlefield that had defined the early years of his adulthood. The everyday grind weighed heavy on his shoulders. Unsuccessful job applications, months of unemployment, and the unshakable feeling of alienation from a society that seemed to have moved on without him. Sitting in his worn-out recliner, Dan flipped through a collection of old pictures and military memorabilia. Each snapshot screamed of a life once full of promise, adventure, and camaraderie. A soldier, proud and fearless. Yet now he was just a fading name, a ghost in his own narrative. Desperate for change, he felt a primal urge coursing through him, a throbbing desire to reclaim his sense of control, to wrestle his destiny from the hands of those who had disregarded him. His mind turned to ideas swirling in a veritable tornado of rebellion. Each potential scheme passed through a filter of reason, but one idea stood out from the rest. A heist. It was bold, audacious, and a way to escape the shackles of traditional existence. The very thought of it sent a thrill rushing through his memories. The rush of adrenaline, the exhilaration of freedom. With a new sense of purpose, he turned on his desk lamp and spread several documents across the table, a collection of airline timetables, city maps, and snippets of articles detailing past hijackings. Dan's eyes flickered over the information, his mind racing with totals of costs and outcomes. He had a plan, and he would execute it flawlessly. He could feel it. He scribbled notes, his pen moving swiftly across the paper, each point fueling his excitement. Choose a flight. Something domestic, with fewer passengers but enough overhead to make it worthwhile. Secure a distraction. He would need to maintain control. Establish demands. Money and an escape route. Parachutes would be key. He was no stranger to jumping from a plane. As he plotted, he couldn't shake the feeling of impending change. The dynamic between hope and despair danced in his mind as he wrestled with thoughts that burned bright, a vivid tension that anchored him. This wasn't just about money, it was about defiance, a chance to embody the very essence of freedom. Dan continued with his plan. He envisioned himself walking through the terminal, blending in seamlessly with the crowd. The thrill built within him, a concoction of anxiety and exhilaration. Tomorrow was the start of something new, a rebirth cloaked in shadows. The next day Dan rose early. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a dull light into his living space. He moved about with intent as he prepared for the day, sipping bitter coffee from a chipped mug. Breakfast was a routine, but today it felt charged with possibility. His mind was alive, buzzing with the energy that came from knowing he was on the brink of something unprecedented. He grabbed his old army jacket and slipped it on. The fabric bore the weight of countless memories. Tightening the collar, he stared into the mirror. His reflection looked back, and for the first time in a long while, it seemed to bear a flicker of determination. A faint smile crept across his lips, illuminating the shadows beneath his eyes. After breakfast, he closed the door behind him. Each click of the latch echoed with the weight of his decision. He walked down the street, passing well-kept houses and lawns expertly manicured. A man cut his grass while children rode their bikes, laughter spilling into the air. He felt disconnected from that world, an outsider among everyday life. As he strolled along, the streets began to meld into a web of possibilities, each passing car a reminder of the mundane churn of existence. He noticed a thrift store tucked away in a quiet corner of the neighborhood, a treasure trove for someone in need of supplies. A plan unfurled in his mind. Inside the store, he rummaged through shelves of discarded garments. He found a dark ski mask and a pair of gloves, perfect for the undertaking he envisioned. Eyeing a nondescript black coat, he decided it would work best for blending into the shadows. With each acquisition, his heart raced, fueled by the thrill of the unknown. Each item was a piece of the puzzle coming together, the identification of self-worth emerging from despair. That evening, he set about completing the details of his plan. With maps of various flight routes laid out before him, he calculated responses and contingencies. He needed clarity on his demands, and those would be unyielding. $200,000, 4 parachutes, and to be allowed to jump from the plane. The contours of his plan solidified, and as night fell, he found himself hunched over notes, full of energy and excitement. He imagined the headlines that would follow: D.B. Cooper, the unlikely rebel, every journalist's dream. The thought festered in his mind. He would become a legend. In the face of an impending adventure, a sense of unity formed with those who fueled his desire for freedom. With the night deepening outside, he took a moment to breathe amidst the frenzy. In the quiet, he felt the stirrings of renewal. His mother had once told him that courage meant talking to the world, albeit in whispers. Dan knew he could reclaim his voice, not just for himself, but for every face that whispered their own battles in the shadows. In the depths of that solace came determination, not merely to exist, but to live. And so, on that ordinary November day, Dan Cooper solidified his transformation. Tomorrow, he would board a plane, and with it, embrace his destiny as the architect of his own rebellion. November 24th, 1971, began like countless other days for the passengers of Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. As the plane ascended from Portland International Airport, a blend of fuel, excitement, and anticipation filled the cabin. Among the passengers, Dan Cooper, a man seemingly unremarkable at first glance, steeled himself for what was to become one of the most audacious heists in American history. The target was chosen for its lack of heavy security and its relatively low-profile nature. But more than that, it presented an opportunity to reclaim agency over his life, to stage a rebellion against a system that had discarded him. Dan believed that by rising above fear and societal constraints, he could carve his own destiny. On board the aircraft, the atmosphere buzzed with the mundane chaos of vacationers and business travelers. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and the smell of coffee wafted through the cabin, bringing a sense of warmth and normalcy to those aboard. Children squealed with delight, couples whispered sweet nothings, and the elderly savored their moments of nostalgia as they flipped through magazines. Among the passengers was Tina, a flight attendant with aspirations far beyond serving drinks in the air. At 28, her vibrant red hair and smiling demeanor often belied a growing sense of dissatisfaction with her life. A recent college graduate, she had taken the job temporarily, hoping it would fund her dream of becoming a writer, of spinning tales that would capture hearts and minds. But with each passing day spent navigating the cramped aisles of commercial flights, her dreams seemed to slip further from reach, replaced by the monotony of repeated routines. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," came the authoritative voice of Captain Bill Scott over the intercom, commanding respect yet laced with unease. He was a man marked by years of dedication to his craft, 2 decades spent navigating the skies, yet now, burdened by the pressures of an industry in decline. The airline had faced struggles in recent times, and the threat of layoffs loomed over him like a dark cloud. Bill had always loved flying, but with the ever-growing unease surrounding air travel, he felt an itch of anxiety creep beneath his optimism. He glanced over at Bob, his first officer. "Prepare for a slight change in altitude. We might encounter some turbulence during descent," he instructed, hoping to reassure both his crew and passengers. As the plane leveled off, Dan's heart raced. Outside the window, the world lay sprawled beneath him. Endless fields, winding rivers, and the soft glow of cities flickering like stars below. An exhilarating thought surged through him. "Soon," he whispered to himself, "I will be free." As the plane continued its course, Dan summoned Tina, the flight attendant, with a wave. She approached with her customary smile, unaware of the gravity layered beneath his calm demeanor. "Could I please have another drink? Crown Royal, if you have it," he requested, maintaining an air of relaxed charm. "Of course, sir," she replied, oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. "Anything else?" "Actually," Dan paused, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "I need to speak with you privately. It's urgent." A flicker of concern crossed her face, though she did not betray her unease. "All right, let's step behind the curtain," she replied, leading him to a small partition, momentarily forgotten by the chaos of the cabin. Once they were out of sight, Dan pulled the envelope from his jacket. Carefully, he extended it towards her. "You need to read this," he said, his voice low and steady. "Then take it to the captain." With trembling fingers, Tina opened the envelope, revealing the neatly scrawled demands: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a promise of a safe getaway. Her heart raced in tandem with the buzzing in her mind. "This is a joke, right?" she stammered. All traces of routine were obliterated, replaced by the chilling reality crashing down around her. "No joke," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "I need you to take it seriously. Tell Captain Scott that if he refuses, people will get hurt, but if he complies, everyone will be okay." Tina's mind spun with disbelief. "How can you do this? What if he doesn't agree?" "He has to," Dan insisted, his voice softening yet tinged with urgency. "I don't want anyone to get hurt. I just want what I've asked for." As she steadied herself and emerged back into the cabin, dread coiled in her stomach. The weight of his words clung to her like heavy chains, pushing against her conscience. Doubts flooded her mind. How was she supposed to react? No training prepared her for this. When she re-entered the cockpit, both Bill and Bob were poring over procedural checks when Tina barged in. "We have a situation," she announced, her voice trembling with urgency. "You need to read this." "What's going on?" Bill asked, immediately sensing the seriousness of her tone. She handed him the ominous note, holding her breath as he read. "It's serious," she added, her hands wringing together. "It's about the demands of a hijacking." Bill's heart sank as he processed the reality unraveling before him. "We need to lock this down now." He passed the note to Bob, and both men locked eyes, the weight of uncertainty hanging heavily in the air. "Cooper is serious," Bill said, deciding the only way to handle this was with tact and authority. "We need to keep him calm. If we agree to the demands, we can ensure the safety of everyone on board." But Bob's face fell. "What if we refuse, Bill? What if he retaliates against the passengers?" "Then we'll have a crisis to manage on our hands," Bill replied, his mind racing through scenarios with an urgency he hadn't felt in years. "Right now, we need to work with what we have and negotiate. We'll contact ground control." Behind them, Dan settled back into his seat, feeling the tension ripple through the cabin like electric currents. Airborne chaos enveloped him, Yet he remained eerily calm. He had prepared for this moment. Every fleeting thought only strengthened his resolve. Seated nearby, an elderly couple whispered anxiously, "What's happening? Are we in danger?" "Just stay calm, dear," the woman said to her husband, squeezing his hand. "I'm sure everything will be all right." Dan couldn't help but appreciate the irony. He was the mastermind behind the turmoil, but in that chaotic moment, he was also a prisoner of his creation. Every anxious glance and whispered fear added fuel to a fire of exhilarating power. He felt alive. From the ground, Agent Duke Johnson received the urgent call he'd been preparing for his entire career. As a seasoned FBI agent with years on the force, he was no stranger to high-stakes situations, but something about this one felt different. Perhaps it was the rapid unfolding of events, or the chilling implications of a hijacking that he knew would capture his agency's focus. "Get the team together. We need to form a strategy now," Duke ordered, his voice commanding and clear, even through the chaos of the communication setup. His partner, Agent Linda Reyes, joined him, her expression mirroring the weight of urgency that weighed heavily in the room. "What do we know about this Cooper?" she questioned, her sharp mind piecing together snippets of information, wrestling with the fear brewing beneath her calm exterior. Linda had been chasing down leads for years, often met with hostility and skepticism, a reflection of being one of the few women in the field. Despite the challenges, she had always brought a sense of compassion into her work, and the current crisis was no exception. "Not much yet," Duke replied, her frustration evident. "How can that be? A man manages to hijack a plane, and we've got nothing on him. Surely someone must know him." "Maybe he's a ghost," Duke suggested, his brow furrowed. "No connections, no visible ties. It's like he just appeared out of thin air." Linda nodded slowly, a thought flickering through her mind. "Or perhaps he's calculated this for a long time. He chooses a flight that has minimal security and a perfect opportunity to execute this plan." "True," Duke replied, "but it raises questions. Why hijack? Is it purely for the money? Or is there something deeper driving him? Desperation? Revenge? How far is he willing to take this?" "We might be overthinking it," Linda suggested. "What if he's just a desperate man looking for an escape? But that doesn't add up. This is no rash decision. He's methodical." Duke paced the small office, absorbing her thoughts. "Right. He must have something to prove. Or he feels wronged, like he's been discarded. If I were in his shoes, I'd have a reason, a motive that's far deeper than just cash." Linda leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "We need context. A man with such desperation might lead to places we haven't even considered. We should start digging into ex-military records, veterans groups. He fits that profile." Duke glanced at Linda, impressed by her instinct. "Let's do it. We'll reach out to them for leads, but we have to be careful. He's not just armed with a note, he's armed with fear, and that's a powerful weapon." As ground control communicated with the aircraft, Duke guided the operations, ensuring every detail was planned. "We'll need to reassure him that he can trust us. Reach out through the cockpit. Let Captain Bill know we're here to assist." Back in the aircraft, tensions continued to mount as the clock ticked away. Each second felt like an eternity. The plane was diverted from its route to Seattle and began its landing approach to a secluded part of the airport. Inside the cabin, Dan felt the exhilaration wash over him, turning into intense anticipation. "Do you think they're actually going to comply?" he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the low hum of the engines. The arrival of ground control had heightened his senses. He could feel the weight of his plan hanging in the air. Captain Bill surveyed the panic in the cabin as the plane descended. "Tina," he said, gripping the steering wheel tighter, "what's the status on the demands? Have they heard back from Cooper?" She nodded, her voice steadying as she reported, He wants the money ready, and he insists on 4 parachutes. It's it's serious, Bill." Bill's mind was racing even faster than the plane's descent. "Keep calm, everyone," he shouted, his voice commanding but not without fear as he turned to the other passengers. "Just a little turbulence, folks. We're making a routine landing." Bob, the first officer, shared a loaded glance with Bill. "You think he could act out? What if he gets desperate?" "I don't know, but I do know we need to play it smart." Bill took a deep breath, desperately fighting back his rising anxiety. "I'll communicate with the ground and coordinate our response." Meanwhile, Dan settled back into his seat, feeling both exhilaration and unease. The stakes have never been higher, and the fiery sense of control he felt minutes ago began to dim against the backdrop of uncertainty. Was I being reckless? Do they have a plan? As the plane touched down, Tina could see the flashing lights of emergency vehicles lining the tarmac. Her heart raced, the gravity of the situation closing in around her. "Oh no," she breathed, dread reaching a crescendo. "What happens now?" Dan's eyes widened as he noticed the lights coming closer through the window. This was it, his moment of truth. But as anticipation kicked in, so did doubt. "Will I get away?" he thought, gripping his knees tightly. Back in the cockpit, the tension was palpable. Bill turned to Bob, his voice steadier now but laced with urgency. "Our priority is to keep Cooper calm. We need to negotiate and get him what he wants. If we wait too long, things might escalate." "Agreed," Bob replied, his brow furrowing. "But how do we avoid a public disaster? We're already in the thick of this." They quickly formulated a plan to inform Dan of their intentions while managing the chaos outside. As ground control communicated, a sense of isolation and vulnerability crept into the cabin. Dan was stuck. He could feel the walls closing in as the urgency of the situation intensified. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated," Tina called, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. "We're handling a situation in the cabin. Please stay calm." Fingers gripped armrests, breaths quickened, and worried whispers filled the air as fear spread like wildfire. Dan felt that tension, that awareness of the stakes, and it sent a shiver down his spine. Just then, Tina re-entered the cabin. "Mr. Cooper," she said, trying to project calmness, "the plane is on the ground and ready for your instructions. We need to know what you would like us to do next." Dan narrowed his eyes at her. "Get me the money and parachutes. Do you understand? This isn't a joke." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the tension beneath. "Of course," Tina assured him. "But we need to work together. If they see you're making demands, if they think you're trying to hurt someone—" Dan's expression turned icy. "I'm not, but I will do what's necessary if they don't comply. Get me what I need." As the minutes ticked by and the aircraft remained grounded, tension lingered in the cabin like a storm cloud ready to burst. Tina felt torn. "I want to help you, but we must be careful." "I said I won't hurt anyone," he stressed. "But you have to make them understand. I'm serious." Tina nodded, emboldening herself. "I'll go talk to the captain again. Please, just stay calm." "I'll try, but don't push me." Dan's voice lowered, intensity sharp behind every word. Then there was a slight bump as the plane shifted. The ground crew finally started unloading the money and parachutes onto the tarmac. Dan's heart raced. This was a make-or-break moment, the leap that would define everything. Prepare for the jump, Dan thought, teetering on the precipice of possibility and disaster. "Ready for takeoff?" Bob asked, eyes flicked to the controls, ready and waiting. "Let's get us in the air safely," Bill responded, his gaze sharp and focused. As the engines roared to life, the sound reverberated through the cabin, rattling the nerves of everyone aboard. Bill's voice broke through the intercom, calm amidst the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, We thank you for your patience. We're preparing for takeoff now. Beneath his resolve, anxiety surged. He would be navigating an unpredictable situation, one that could explode at any second. But the gravity of their responsibility weighed heavily upon him. Fates and lives were interwoven through every decision made. The plane began to taxi down the runway, and Dan watched intently, tension radiating from his body. Thoughts raced through his mind as he contemplated the impending moment of freedom he believed awaited him. As the plane lifted into the air, the familiarity of flight took hold. Gravity faded as the world below dwindled into a vast expanse. Bill and Bob shared a tense glance, both aware that despite their triumph in getting airborne, all stakes had amplified. "Now we just keep him calm," Bob said steadily, his hands gripping the controls. The airplane stabilized, but a wave of turbulence coursed through the cabin. Tina moved through the aisle, her presence both soothing and integral. "We're in the air now, Mr. Cooper. I assure you that everything is being handled. Once we reach cruising altitude, your request will be fulfilled." Dan looked around at the other passengers' faces, his heart racing. "You've kept your word. Make sure I get what I asked for." "I will," Tina replied firmly. "Just hang tight. We'll get you your parachutes and money shortly." As the plane continued its ascent, tensions peaked, but the sound of engines roaring through clouds was the only thing that remained constant. The carefully orchestrated plan was now set into motion, a delicate game of trust that would dictate the next moves of Dan Cooper and everyone he held in the balance. With each passing second, Dan felt the weight of possibility looming larger. The turning point neared. Freedom beckoned on the other side of fear. Decisions lay just ahead, and the path remained uncertain. As he stepped carefully toward the rear of the cabin, Dan's breath quickened, each heartbeat pounding in sync with the profound realization of what was about to unfold. Behind him, the cabin stormed with the whispers of chaos, passengers' prayers curling softly under the din of confusion. "Mr. Cooper," Tina called out as he prepared to make his move. "Are you sure you want to do this? The fall could be dangerous." "I have no choice," he shot back, feeling the visceral pull of fate beckoning him forward. He took a moment to glance out the open door, the world sprawling far below, waiting for him. The wild rush of freedom and uncertainty beckoned like a siren's call. With a resolute breath, Dan leaped into the unknown. The air rushed past him, whipping against his skin as he felt the pull of the parachute, the bittersweet taste of adrenaline coupling with fear. For that fleeting moment, he was weightless, liberated. No longer just a forgotten veteran, but a renegade ready to reclaim his destiny. And as he fell, the realization washed over him. The ground was closer than it appeared, and his escape had begun. The mixture of exhilaration and dread surged through him, amplifying with every passing second. Back at the airport, the authorities began to mobilize. Duke methodically directed operations, each movement calculated, his experience guiding the way. "We need an immediate response team on the ground," he ordered, relaying orders while his mind raced. "Do we have a sighting?" Linda barked messages into her radio. "We need to know which direction he headed." As the sun set, the atmosphere grew heavy with urgency. Reports began pouring in from witnesses confirming the parachute sighting. "He's heading north," one reported breathlessly. Amidst the chaos, the national media began to spin the narrative, eager to claim exclusive stories. "This is just incredible," a news anchor exclaimed on TV screens across homes and bars worldwide. "What motivates a man to hijack a plane and leap into the unknown?" Days turned into a furious frenzy of investigations. Linda darkened the edges of her eyes from lack of sleep, building psychological profiles for the potential suspect. "He's smart, but desperate. That perilous leap signifies he has nothing left to lose. she theorized, pacing the cramped office as files and evidence surrounded her. Duke listened, nodding as he absorbed the bits of insight. And if that's the case, he'll resort to anything to evade capture. We must tread carefully. Their partnership deepening, Duke and Linda spent long hours poring over maps, witness statements, and theories while slowly forming a bond of understanding. They often shared personal anecdotes, stories that illuminated their pasts and their motivations. Linda spoke about her struggles in a male-dominated work environment, while Duke shared his family legacy of police work. "I joined the FBI to honor my father," Duke admitted one day, his voice echoing softly. "He dedicated his life to serving the community. I wanted to make the same impact, but sometimes I feel like I'm just part of a system that fails." Linda nodded, having long ago recognized the weight he carried. "I thought I could change the world too, but sometimes it feels like we lose our ability to do so. This case, it's a reminder. Each one matters. Every life is precious." As new developments arose, rumored sightings and bizarre coincidences, capturing the imaginations of those far beyond the reaches of Oregon's back roads. New theories abounded. The fascination took on a life of its own. Major news outlets published stories dissecting every detail, from theories that Cooper might have enlisted the help of an underground network to alternate narratives suggesting he perished in the forest beyond. Duke and Linda found themselves inundated by the sheer volume of speculation. At community centers across Seattle, people gathered to share their theories. "What if he's living nearby?" one man proposed at a local bar, his eyes wide with zeal. "He could have changed his identity, could be living among us." "I heard he might have had inside help," another added eagerly, his hands gesturing wildly. Days stretched into months, yet the investigation continued. Duke and Linda became embroiled in every twist and turn, determined to unearth the truth behind Cooper's fate. As new leads continued to flow in, they often spent weekends revisiting potential locations that lined the trajectory of his escape. Newspapers remained alive with stories of abandoned hopes and near misses, unwinding the narrative like a braided rope of suspense. "I never anticipated it would become this immersive," Duke admitted at dusk one evening as they reviewed the maps. "But there's something captivating about uncovering layers of mystery." Linda's eyes sparkled with determination. "We'll keep peeling back the layers. There's still a story waiting to be revealed, somewhere out there." As the years rolled on, Duke and Linda's investigative partnership deepened, their shared experiences steeping into each new development. Duke found comfort in Linda's resilience. She was more than a partner. She was a friend who understood the struggles of the world beyond their case. "Sometimes I think I'll never solve this," Duke confessed one early morning as they pored over sketchy leads. "But the legacy of D.B. Cooper won't end until someone uncovers it." Linda smiled knowingly, the fire in her heart unwavering. "It's possible, but maybe what we've built here, the community, the connections, are equally important. We've challenged each other to think beyond crime. We've given people hope." Their discussions deepened with each passing year. They reflected on their lives, threading stories of personal ambitions and frustrations into a coherent narrative that spoke of shared humanity, connecting their struggles with the broader themes of flight and freedom. As new evidence continually surfaced, the mystery of D.B. Cooper endured. Stories solidified into fabric, wrapping around their lives, entwining them not just as agents but as integral parts of a tapestry that extended far beyond the chase. Each lead brought fresh excitement, each telephone call a heartbeat of potential. Multiple young dreamers stepped into the spotlight as amateur sleuths, chasing the elusive truth. Yet even within the excitement, they consistently acknowledged their shared narrative. As of 2023, The FBI remains officially responsible for the case, but after years of investigation, they are no longer actively pursuing the case as a high-priority matter. Instead, it has transitioned into a legacy of speculation and ongoing research. One of the most noted recent developments unfolded in 2016 when a group of amateur investigative journalists published Finding D.B. Cooper. The book presented a profile of possible suspects, including individuals who had served alongside Cooper in Vietnam. The team, fueled by personal experiences and interviews, claimed to have uncovered clues that led them to a man named Robert Rackstraw, a decorated former paratrooper with a history of petty crime. However, to this day, these claims remain subjects of heated debate. In addition to claims about Rackstraw, other recent theories have surfaced, including the suggestion that Cooper was, in fact, a member of a larger smuggling operation, possibly involving drugs, which would explain his sophisticated planning and ability to navigate the skies. This notion has piqued interest among law enforcement agents looking for a broader context to Cooper's background. Recently, a documentary aired that scrutinized surveillance footage from the airport on the day of the hijacking. Analysts emphasized the wild incongruence in Cooper's composure, suggesting that his demeanor hinted at potential prior knowledge of airport procedures. This analysis spurred discussions amongst experts and conspiracy theorists alike that Cooper might have had allies who assisted him from the ground or had meticulously studied flight operations beforehand. Furthermore, artifacts and evidence continue to be unearthed intermittently. In 1980, a young boy discovered a package of money in the Columbia River, on which serial numbers matched those of the ransom paid to Cooper. The discovery became a landmark moment, sparking renewed efforts to trace Cooper's past. However, law enforcement was unable to trace the bill back to Cooper as the path of the money was lost. Private individuals also contribute insights into the ongoing investigation. Among these is Eric Eulis, a dedicated amateur who has made it his life's work to study the case. Eulis runs a website that archives every piece of evidence associated with the case and has consulted with historians and other enthusiasts on theories that contribute to understanding Cooper's motivations. He and others like him have crafted detailed maps and even conducted reenactments to illustrate potential escape paths Cooper could have taken post-jump. Despite the passage of time and the shifting lens through which the legend of D.B. Cooper is viewed, law enforcement remains vigilant. Agents still occasionally review documents and leads that emerge, though they point out the challenges posed by the fluidity of evidence over 5 decades. In 2019, the FBI verbally indicated that it would not close the case entirely, acknowledging the potential for new discoveries that could lead to a breakthrough. Presently, enthusiasts and investigators alike continue to rally around the legend, turning it into a cultural phenomenon that reflects the American spirit of adventure, the uncertainties of life, and the thirst for freedom. D.B. Cooper has become a symbol of intrigue, transforming his narrative into a tapestry woven with threads of rebellion, desperation, and endless possibilities. As the years go by, the legacy endures, a testament to the complexities of the human experience, the triumph of the individual spirit, and an enduring quest for the truth that seems just out of reach. And so, the story of D.B. Cooper remains alive, resonating through the annals of time, with captivating whispers leading those daring enough to pursue the mysteries that shape who we are.